What's really happening in Iran right now? What if an entire nation erupted in anger and the world barely blinked? What if economic collapse, bloody crackdowns, and global power struggles collided in ways that could reshape the Middle East? Today, we're going beyond headlines to uncover what's really happening in Iran right now, what's driving it, and why the future of the region might hang in the balance. The uprising, from economic collapse to nationwide anger. To understand today, we need to go back just a few months. In late December 2025, protests ignited across Iran, not just in one city, but in dozens, from Tehran to Rasht, Fardis, and beyond. They didn't start with politics, they started with pain. Iranians have been struggling with soaring inflation, a collapsed currency, skyrocketing prices, and basic utilities failing, from water shortages in 2025 to spiraling living costs. These pressures turned frustration into action, and action into nationwide demonstrations. But these protests didn't stay limited to bread and bills. As people marched, the chants began to shift, calling for real change, challenging authority, and confronting the very structure of Iran's political system. A brutal crackdown, the government's response. What happened next was historic and horrific. Iranian authorities responded with extraordinary force. Security forces, including the powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and National Police, used live ammunition, tear gas, beatings, and mass arrests to suppress the demonstrations. In some cities like Rasht, what began as protest quickly turned into a massacre. Eyewitnesses describe hundreds, possibly thousands, killed in just 2 days. In Fardis, machine guns were reportedly used against demonstrators. And in a highly controversial case, at least one protester, Irfan Sultani, was sentenced to death after being arrested with no proper legal process, underscoring just how far the government is willing to go to intimidate its critics. Human rights groups, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, describe these tactics as unlawful and systematic, with security forces repeatedly firing on civilians, including women and children. Internet blackout, cutting off information flow. Amid this violence, the Iranian government took another drastic step: a nationwide internet blackout, one of the longest in the country's history. For weeks, mobile data, social media, and global messaging apps were largely inaccessible inside Iran. This wasn't just about control, it was about concealment. With limited connectivity, news about casualties, protest locations, arrests, and government abuses couldn't spread easily. Iranian citizens were left isolated, and the regime's actions cloaked in silence. Experts say such digital blackouts are not just tools of repression, they're also designed to make the rest of the world less informed, less reactive, and less able to mobilize support. How many have been killed or detained? Here's where things get murky and terrifying. Different sources paint vastly different pictures. Rights groups and independent observers estimate thousands of deaths from the crackdown. Inside Iran, official numbers remain ambiguous and heavily controlled. But satellite data, hospital reports, and eyewitness accounts suggest that death tolls may be dramatically higher than officially admitted. Tens of thousands of people have reportedly been detained, many without charge, and many held in undisclosed locations. Imagine entire neighborhoods emptied, families torn apart, not knowing if their loved ones will ever return. Government rhetoric. Defend or demonize. Tehran's leadership doesn't just deny wrongdoing, it has aggressively reframed what's happening. Supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has labelled demonstrators as saboteurs and enemies of the state, blaming external forces for igniting unrest. Officials insist protests were not grassroots movements for better lives, but attempted coups backed by foreign nations, especially the United States and Israel, which they accuse of orchestrating chaos. Pro-government rallies, large gatherings where people waved flags and chanted loyalty, were also staged across cities, showcasing an attempt to reassert public support for the regime. But the authenticity of these rallies has been questioned by independent analysts and social media observers, with some videos potentially altered or staged. The US factor: tensions, talks and threats. While the protests are fundamentally a domestic crisis, global powers are deeply involved. The Trump administration responded with a mix of military pressure, economic sanctions, and diplomatic threats, even hinting at military action if protesters were harmed. Warships were deployed to the Gulf region, and US rhetoric oscillated between deal-making and escalation. Trump has said Iran is in talks with the US, and hinted at a possible diplomatic deal to avert strikes, but only under strict conditions, including halting nuclear efforts and ending repression. At the same time, narratives in Tehran vary. Some officials publicly deny direct talks but remain open to diplomatic engagement under certain terms. This dance, threats mixed with dialogue, has created intense uncertainty. Are we inching toward a diplomatic breakthrough or sliding toward military confrontation? EU and international responses. Externally, Western governments have taken firmer stances. Most notably, the European Union formally designated Iran's Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization, citing its role in violent repression. In response, Iran summoned EU ambassadors to protest the move, a serious diplomatic escalation. These designations have real effects: asset freezes, travel bans, and criminalization of support for the IRQ. This intensifies pressure on Tehran and strains relationships with Europe. Meanwhile, Arab allies in the region are urging restraint from both Iran and the US, worried that an outright conflict could destabilize the entire Middle East, from oil markets to regional alliances. Nuclear talks, negotiation, or just talk? Amid all of this, one of the biggest questions remains: what's happening with Iran's nuclear program? At times, Tehran has signaled openness to negotiations, potentially offering frameworks to curtail enrichment in exchange for sanctions relief. Yet other officials have insisted there are no scheduled nuclear talks with the US, calling for fair and equitable negotiations, but warning against military alternatives. So the picture is confusing. Both sides are sending mixed signals, sometimes threatening, sometimes offering dialogue, sometimes refusing direct engagement. This tension keeps global markets and governments on edge. In fact, oil prices recently fell significantly after comments suggesting de-escalation and possible talks, showing just how closely markets are watching these developments. What comes next? 3 possible scenarios. So with protests, repression, international pressure, and nuclear tensions all intersecting, what could happen? Scenario 1. Continued repression. The Iranian government doubles down, quelling protests and regaining control through force and surveillance. The internet remains restricted, dissent crushed, and the world watches from afar. Scenario 2. Diplomatic breakthrough. Iran and the US strike a deal that eases nuclear tensions, reduces sanctions, and cools fears of war, but not before geopolitical trust is severely tested. Scenario 3. Escalation and conflict. Communication breaks down completely, miscalculations occur, and military conflict erupts, dragging regional powers into a broader war that could redraw alliances and impact energy markets worldwide. None of these outcomes is guaranteed, but they all reflect a world in flux. Final thoughts. Why this matters. The crisis in Iran isn't just a news headline. It's a human tragedy. People fighting for dignity, facing repression, and risking everything for change. It's a diplomatic flashpoint that could reshape alliances. And it's a moment that may define Middle East politics for years to come. Whether you're watching from thousands of miles away or studying international relations, the situation in Iran right now is one of the most consequential events in global politics. And it deserves our attention, not just our headlines. If you want more deep analysis and updates on global events like this, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Drop a comment below. What do you think will happen next in Iran?